Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Ohio Family Engagement Leadership Summit. We are glad that you could join us on this day, a professional learning meant to take family school community partnership to the next level. My name is Bobby Sin, and I will be your session moderator. This is session number 13, which the title is Cross-Agency Family Engagement to Prepare Transition Students for Adulthood. If you have any questions, concerns, or technical issues, please message me privately in the chat. To ensure that all get the most out of today, we ask that all participants turn off their webcam and their microphones. If you forget about the microphone, I can mute it. If you have any questions for the presenters, please use that chat feature and I can pass them along at the appropriate time. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Be sure to use the hashtag OHSummit23 to share your thoughts. Alex, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Bobby, and thank you all for being here today. And we're going to just jump right into it by doing some quick introductions. I am Alex Corwin. I'm from Ocali's Lifespan Transition Center, and we work in the secondary transition space, which we'll define and talk a bit more about, as well as kind of through adulthood. So our center and our team works closely with schools, county boards of developmental disabilities, opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities, and other partners that are able to support transition age youth and their families. And then I will pass it over to Jen and Emily to introduce themselves.
I'm Emily Esquia. I'm a transition coordinator with Medina City Schools. And by transition coordinator, I work with students in high school and their families on their transition from school services to adulthood.
And I'm Jen Call. I'm a service and support administrator with a specific transition age caseload at the Medina County Board of Developmental Disabilities.
I'm already jealous of where you two ladies are at. It looks beautiful in Medina County today. If folks don't mind, you see it here on the slide, but if you could just put your name, your title, your organization, just curious to know where everyone is joining us from at different parts of the state and what different titles you may have. We are, again, focused in that secondary transition space, and you may be asking yourself, well, what is secondary transition? So secondary transition here in Ohio is for students with disabilities age 14, or that says younger, but it's actually older, younger if appropriate, sorry, formally entering the secondary transition planning process. So as part of that IEP, Section 5, I believe it still is, the transition plan has to occur and has to be a discussion for the IEP team once that student turns 14. So that first IEP meeting after the student turns 14, they have to have this formal transition plan to help them navigate and build the skills necessary to achieve their adult life vision or their post-school goals in employment, education, or independent living. So we know that this successful transition process is the result of really comprehensive planning that focuses on the student's PINs. So those are preferences, interests, needs, and strengths. It's not just kind of this one-time plan that we put together, but it really is this ongoing living plan that we update in relationship to the student's PINs and what they want to achieve in adulthood. And again, we are working towards a variety of future outcomes, right? It's employment, it's education, and continuing different training, again, whether it's trade school, technical school, or a four-year college, and then preparing for independent living, whether that's money management skills, skills needed to live on your own, the laundry and budgeting and other things. So really comprehensive when you think of secondary transition and the different goals, services, and skills that both Jen and Emily and others help youth kind of navigate and build towards adulthood. So what does the research say about secondary transition? One of the predictors for post-school success in both employment and education is that students who receive assistance from 3 to 6 community-based agencies, as compared to students who receive assistance from 0 to 2 agencies, were more likely to be engaged in post-school employment or education. And if you're familiar with Indicator 14 here in Ohio, that post-school engagement survey, if we have more team members, more adult serving agencies that are able to support the youth, achieve their adult life vision and those post-school goals, the more likely they are to achieve them. So building this really strong multi-agency team as part of your IEP planning team is really important. And that's what we're going to kind of highlight here today with Emily and Jen. So how can we use this predictor to help improve our family engagement? We know here in Ohio that 3 of kind of the big partners are always schools, county boards of developmental disabilities, which is where Jen works, and then Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, which is our state vocational rehabilitation agency. They offer a variety of employment-related services and supports for youth to help them build employment skills and obtain employment. So we have here in Ohio, and as part of Ocali's different projects, worked with county-based teams to bring together schools, county boards, and OOD to strategically plan a little bit, to learn more about each other, how to work effectively and efficiently together, but then also how do we create this united front to speak the same language to families, to really build our family engagement strategies together and not just doing things in a silo, but knowing that any student in any district may have 3 or 4 different outside partner agencies working with them. How can we all work with families to make engaging with these partners much more simpler, instead of everyone having their own meetings, trying to carve family time, trying to gain that family attention for the different planning and services that they can experience. So I'm going to hand it back over to Jen and Emily to talk a bit about their Medina County CAPS team.
So our group has gone by multiple different names over the years, but the last or the most recent is Medina Collaborating Agencies for Post-Secondary Success, which we've kind of given that moniker of CAPS. And our partners include all the school districts in the county, myself, and there are 2 other transition SSAs at the county board, Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, a handful of adult service agencies that also support transition age youth, our career center, our parent mentors, our state support team, and then we also have an ombudsman in Medina County, and she's part of our team as well to help families with navigating when they feel they're having a struggle with that. So she's a great asset to our team as well.
And then as part of our CAPS project, we worked really hard on coming up with a vision that we all could agree on, that all of our agencies share, so that it would help direct our work together, and also give the families that we work with an idea of how we are all connected. So we came up with our vision is to partner to assist students and families in developing and reaching goals toward connecting with our community. So whatever role any of our agencies play, we are all sharing a common goal to get the students that we work with as engaged in the community as possible.
I just have a quick question for both Emily and Jen about your mission and vision. How has that just helped you guys when you're collaborating, right? Whether it's for family engagement or other things, how does that mission or vision keep everyone kind of on the same page?
I think it always helps us when we come up with programs that we want to do countywide, or we come up with an idea of we're going to put on a presentation for families or something. It helps everyone stay focused on, is this going to further our mission of helping those families and students be connected in the community? That's really, if that's not what we're doing, if that's not going to help move us towards that, then it's probably not something that we're going to focus on or spend a lot of time or energy on as a group. So we might do different things in our own agencies that aren't necessarily on that specific vision because we all have different things we are tasked with. But when we get together as a countywide group, everything that we're trying to do together and everything that we spend time planning and putting on in terms of activities, resources, and things for the community are going to focus on that one goal and mission.
Wonderful.
I saw that question popped up real quick in the chat box. Someone asked which agency kind of drove our collaboration. And kind of the funny thing is we've had a collaborative group in Medina County for 20 plus years. So the concept of multi-agency collaboration, when we heard about it and Ocali approached us to work with them and things, we're like, well, what do you mean other places don't do this? We've been doing this for 20 or more years. And so it was a kind of just, it started off as more of a coffee group that people got together, and it was the county board and the schools and, adult agencies, even way back then, to just brainstorm and to vent and to problem solve and to just support one another. So it really from the get-go was a collaboration. Like there was no one really spearheading the need to start this. So I think we're fortunate in our county that we've always kind of had that collaborative mentality, which, we've learned to not take for granted for sure.
But even we inherited, we came into our roles and there was already this very loose structure of people getting together periodically to just discuss things. So it's changed over time, but it was already there. So yeah, we're pretty fortunate in that. But it does tend to be, in our particular case, it does tend to be county board and school districts that take the leading role in most of the activities and movement. Yeah. And I don't know if that's just personality rather than agency or what, but.
I think this is a perfect segue into our next question, which is just how is your MAP team or your multi-agency planning team structured there in Medina County?
So I had mentioned before, they started out very informally as a coffee group. And at one point we got to a very formalized and structured type of a group where we had bylaws and we were looking to 501c3 potential and all of that kind of stuff. And staffing changes, time elapsed, and we've really gotten back to more of a lesser structured group. At this point, we do have meetings monthly. They're very informal. We have a loose agenda every month. We always do introductions because we especially recently have lots of new faces, even sometimes on a monthly basis. So always introductions, sharing out about all of our different agencies, the new, what's new, different, changing, that kind of thing. We brainstorm, sometimes someone will come in and say, hey, I have this, student or family and we're struggling to connect, or do you have ideas, that kind of thing. So it's a resource sharing, supporting, brainstorming type group. We move around to different locations in the county for our meetings. For example, this month, we had our meeting at the county board. Next month, we're going to our career center. In November, we're going to our Ohio Means Jobs for Ohio graduates, the JOG program, to see their new location and changes they've had recently. So we want to get us out there and seeing and touching and, really having a good handle on what the resources are in the community for our families to then, share with families for them. Emily and I are the co-leaders of the group, and we don't really have a formal hierarchy. Like, I'm not the president. We don't do any of that. Sometimes it feels a little like Jen and Emily are doing it, so we're going to leave things as it is. But it's working, I think, that way, to kind of have that looser. It feels more comfortable, I think, for us to have that type of a structure. So we also plan training sessions, information sessions. We've hosted transition fairs, all of that kind of thing as well. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And you touched on it a bit, but what was kind of the idea around having your meetings in a different location, right? Instead of just doing it in the same spot, the same time of month, same time. Like what was the reason behind having it at all these different locations?
Some of it was because we knew people that wanted to attend our meetings and they couldn't come if it wasn't held at their location. So we, allows them to participate in our meetings when they're not able to get away from their building. And then also because a PowerPoint presentation and talking about a new program at the Career Center, for example, is great, but we want to see it. We want to see the kids in it. We want to talk to the instructor, those kinds of things, so that we can really get a good grasp on what these resources are for the students. And so we can accurately describe them when we're meeting with families.
Wonderful. I love that idea. Yeah. Because I think, everyone has different flexibility within their role, and whether, even if it's just going to a meeting, 10 minutes down the street, can be really difficult for some people to get even that level of participation. But if it is, 20, 30 minutes away, it makes it even harder. So kudos for you guys to being able to move the location around so that way everyone has a chance to participate and see what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
All right. So our next question here is, how do you kind of professionally or your organization support transition students? So this will give us a little bit of context into then how you guys have developed some of your family engagement based off of how you guys support transition age students.
So school-wise, as a school person, we're obviously focused on our IEP goals, and we're focused on meeting academic needs to graduate from high school. And then additionally, on top of the normal academics, we're, in a lot of cases, we're interested in furthering students' ability to engage with employment or independent living skills. And so we might have additional activities or partner with agencies during the school years that might give students opportunities to try some things out that they wouldn't normally do as a part of a college prep curriculum or something like that. So as a school, that's my focus, is to help families and students meet the needs they have for graduation requirements, but also to do any other programs that we have that might further their independent skills in regards to employment or independent living, or even getting a driver's license. Are there things that we can do to assist in any of those kinds of activities? But then obviously once they leave school services, they're not going to have any more contact with us. So Jen's role with the county board is to help families and students during the school process get to know what's available through the county boards, get to know if are there any resources that they need while they're in school that they can provide. And if not, at least be aware of what's coming down the pike and what they can provide when school services end. So we used to find that families were very, very nervous and really got uncomfortable at the thought of exiting school services because, who's going to be involved in our lives to help and provide resources and support at that point. And when Jen can get involved, or the county board agency is there from an early age at 14, and they're a part of the IEP meetings and they're a part of all of the things that we're doing, then they're able to provide all that information up front, and it's a much easier transition. OOD that you see there is Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. They're exclusively concerned with employment, maybe some post-secondary training, anything that might involve the future goals for employment for an individual. So they're going to be able to do that piece in a way that school can't and the county board may not be able to. So we all have different roles to play, but our focus is common in that we are working towards the overall independence and community engagement for the student that we share.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And it's nice to know that not only is it these three partners, but you guys had you guys went over your team structure earlier. You guys have even more partners at the table that you can leverage and bring on to IEP teams based off of those needs that are identified in a student's PINs and based off of some of the experiences they may have, it may lead you or Jen to engage with another agency, right?
Right. Yep.
Great. So we want to kind of get into the meat of what we're talking about. So we wanted to make sure everyone kind of had a general understanding of secondary transition. You know, if you don't necessarily come from working with students with disabilities, understanding secondary transition, some of the key partners. So now we want to know from Jen and Emily, kind of how has your Medina team partnered to improve the ability to engage all of the families that you guys are working with?
Well, I think to start off, we have really looked at and developed relationships together that is very different than I see happening in a lot of other counties and communities. So I think it even gets down to the fundamentals of building the team of people to then support, you know, the families better. And so we've made a big concerted effort on getting to know one another. I mean, Emily and I have worked together for 15 or more years now, and we know everything, you know, what her daughter's doing and what my boys are doing. And, you know, and it helps. We feel, you know, we have an interest in each other and developed a friendship outside. But I think when you're able to get to that level with your partners, it shows to the families, you know, it helps kind of break down those barriers when they hear us talking informally together, as opposed to being, you know, so regimented by like the, you know, NIEP meeting or something like that. We participated in a, sorry, I'm looking up at the screen at the notes and the notes in front of me and they're different. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm so sorry. But another important thing is to view your county partners as your coworkers. So it's easy to, oh, that's your agency, not mine. But if we're all in this together, like a coworker would be, that makes it a much more seamless and easy partnership when you're viewing each other as your coworkers, as opposed to, you know, here's me and there's you and we're all separate. And another key factor we have found that helps us remember those strategies is, you know, if a family's ranting and raving about being upset about something that happened at one agency and they're coming to me to vent about it, I'm not going to badmouth that agency. And, you know, I'll empathize and, you know, acknowledge their frustrations, but then I'm going to help them move towards an understanding and a solution with that agency using the contacts that I have and the relationships I've built at that agency. So I think it really starts with, you know, cultivating that partnership with the other agencies and schools and all of that kind of thing, that then, you know, we can move into really looking at better engaging with families. So
Yeah.
And I know you guys have kind of talked about that no wrong door policy. Like, how does that work when a family maybe comes to someone at the school, right? And they're like, I need some help with employment or finding a part-time job or with my driver's license. I think you mentioned it a little bit, but how does that just work for all of your partners?
I think that that's inherent with the building of relationships. Once you understand really what everybody else in the county is able to provide and how their systems work and what the limits of each system are, so you're not, you know, you don't have unrealistic expectations for what somebody's agency is really able to provide. I think then that allows you to have that no wrong door because you feel confident that you can help direct the family in the right way. So yeah, if somebody were to call me and say, you know, we would like our kid to do the summer work program, we heard about a summer work program. As a school person, I wouldn't say, oh, that's OOD, that's not something school provides, and shut it down. I would say that's through a state agency called Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. Your student would have to apply and be determined to be eligible for that. Would you be interested in doing that? I can get you the paperwork on that. I can get you a phone number or contact. so we're never shutting down the question from the family. We're always able to redirect or find the solution that they need, or at least offer the first step towards answering that question for them. So I think we continue to make them feel successful when they come with questions. It doesn't it doesn't feel like I'm afraid to pick up the phone and call because I'm going to feel stupid when I ask this and they tell me they're not the one that I'm supposed to be talking to. I think that's really a key thing that we found is one really big benefit about really understanding everybody's roles in the county.
And all of these systems are complex, even for us that live in and work in them like daily, right? And imagining to your point, Emily, a family not knowing, who provides what, asking maybe their most trusted IEP team member to say, hey, we've heard about this summer youth work experience. We'd really like Alex to get involved with it this summer. How do we make that happen? Yeah, instead of just, well, we don't do that. You'd have to talk to so-and-so and kind of ending the discussion there, really helping facilitate that because you guys have such strong collaboration and know each other so well. It's a more of a warm handoff, right? Like you can call
right.
a certain counselor. I know, they work with other students in your district. Why don't we fill out this application, or here's the paperwork. You can send it to me. You can send it right to the counselor, whatever works for you. But I think that makes a huge difference with families that don't know like our service language. They don't know our jargon. They don't know our acronyms. So, just trying to help them connect the dots from our perspective, I think is really, really helpful. And I'm glad you guys touched on that because anything we can do to make it simpler for families to get engaged with all these wonderful partners is something worth doing.
Yeah. All
right. So we want to kind of hear from some of you. We have some transition folks, some SSAs. We have some other partners here, but what partners do you and your students or families traditionally engage with? You can feel free to unmute and share a little bit, or if you would like to put it in the chat. But we just want to know, now that you've kind of seen how Emily and Jen and many of their other partners work in Medina County, if you were to put together your own team, who might that include? Who are some partners that you traditionally engage with or know a lot about that you could create this multi-agency team together to better support your families? We all have children, so our superpower is waiting and being patient, right?
So there's one answer so far in the chat.
Oh, you muted there, Bobby. Yes, Lori. And I think, Lori, I saw you're a parent mentor at the Ohio School for the Blind. So you have county boards, OOD, and specifically their Bureau for Visually Impaired. So that's wonderful. Anyone that's in kind of like early intervention or working with young kiddos that maybe there are partners that we didn't talk about here yet today that you traditionally work with? All right, Melissa has put in the chat as well that she's currently building a community resource connection in Richland County. Several nonprofits and social service agencies attending Help Me Grow, OOD, the Area Agency on Aging, and many more. Awesome. That's great. Yeah, and I think one takeaway, right, as you're building a team is having that unifying like mission or vision, right? Like what are we going to pass everything we do? Like what lens will we pass this through that has to make sure that we're all bought into this one mission or vision to support our families and youth and children. That way we don't get off course, right? Because it can happen really quickly. People bring awesome ideas, but it just may not work for the entirety of the group, right? It doesn't mean they're bad ideas. It just means that it may be something that your organization just does, right? But what are we going to try to accomplish together that we can all buy into and we can continue to kind of support? All right. And Gina's also dropped something in the chat about teamwork. And as a community-based organization working with schools, it's extremely hard to learn the language and know the various agencies to share support and partnership with families. 100%, yes. In our after-school program that we have a relationship with as well. Yeah. it can be really tough trying to kind of get your foot in the door, trying to develop those relationships early. But did you guys experience that building your team, or was some turnover on your team as far as how to re-engage a partner or how to be really persistent with somebody?
Yeah, and I think we just had a discussion earlier today because there's some agency stuff in the county that's changed a little bit, and we're trying to think, how do we reconnect in a way that, it feels unusual for us to have to go back out and sort of pull them back in and ask to reconnect and stuff, but their system has changed pretty significantly in the last few years, and it no longer really is fitting with us as well. So, but it should, and we'd like to kind of get that back going. So I think that's constant, but I really think we always come back to the hard part about building those relationships. The thing that's worked the best for us is very informal, like, hey, can we just get together for coffee? Can you spare 15 minutes to grab a cup of coffee? And I just want to know about what you do, where you do it. Just the beginnings of those kinds of conversations, very informally, outside of a phone call. If you can, when you are able, I know that's a luxury that's not always afforded to everyone, but if you're able to do that, I think that just those kind of frequent informal contact to build up those conversations, and then the common language starts coming, and then those understanding of, oh, I remember we talked about that is something that is done there or not done there or whatever. That's been like, we think kind of is the key to the success, is to continuously have those sort of informal conversations and contacts in between meetings and things like that, so that we keep the conversation going. Right. I don't know if that's helpful, but.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's an activity we've done with a lot of our MAP teams called like burning question, right? Like, what burning question do you have for one of your partners? Like, why do you do it this way? Like, why is it a 90-day closure? Or why is it, what does a waitlist assessment mean? Like, how do people get waivers at the county board? Like, and I think having those really like probing questions just to learn more about each other, to your point, then you can start to understand how you leverage each other and how you can build that true no wrong door policy, because you understand how all the pieces fit together in your county and how the partners work together.
That's especially helpful when you work with an agency that serves other counties, because things across those county lines can be drastically different. And so that's been really beneficial when you can have those conversations together outside of a meeting with a family, because I think, it could appear to be defensive or accusatory or something when you're like, whoa, that's not how we do it here in Medina. But these informal, kind of chats allow you to have those conversations together without, trying to correct in front of a meeting, because they just didn't know that that's how it's done in your county versus another county and things like that. So that's been helpful for us too, to again have that united front in front of families that, we're all in this together. So.
And I see Lori put something in the chat. In Trumbull County, their Family and Children First Council is a vehicle for great collaboration. They've got a lot of early childhood agencies that work together on events. And for secondary transition, there's a group called Voices of Youth that brings community organizations together. So that's wonderful. And I know Family and Children First Councils are typically a pretty strong partner with our MAP teams across the state. And Lori, I'm going to put my email in the chat, because we just started working with a new MAP team in Trumbull County. So I'd love to make sure you're connected to that work, working with that county board and some schools and OOD. So we'd love to make sure that you are connected and again, are able to participate in that no wrong door policy with as many partners as you can there in Trumbull. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing. We're going to kind of continue to talk about family engagement and what some of the Medina team members have been able to develop in order to try to serve and engage all families. There is a strong chance that sometime throughout this summit, you've already heard about family engagement as a multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, which is a big concept and an acronym in the education world. But if you're looking at the graphic here, MTSS means that we're just developing strategies, right, in that green space that should be connecting, and they're intended to meet every single family, right? We're going to develop a set of strategies, maybe for communicating about partners, right? Maybe it's transition fairs, maybe it's flyers, maybe it's a website, maybe it's a quick short video that we post on the website. So that way people can learn about OOD or county board or Social Security. And those are intended to meet the needs of all families. But we know that there are different barriers to family engagement, right? If it's just an inability to access the internet, English as not their first language, single family homes that are people that are potentially working multiple jobs, they don't have as much time to participate in the events that are on. So we have this kind of tiered support, right? Where if we know different barriers that occur, that our families are communicating to us why they can't participate or get this information, well, then we'll develop this set of activities for them. And then even further along, if we still aren't getting to some of those families, right, in that very red tip of this pyramid, we're going to individualize on a family to family basis how we're going to make sure that they are still getting that information about all these partners. Maybe it's a home visit. Maybe it's scheduling planning meetings at 9 o'clock at night because that's the best time for the family. So just wanted to kind of first put out, if you haven't already heard about kind of multi-tiered system of support for family engagement, just being able to have these really robust and set of activities in that universal section that's supposed to meet the needs of everybody. But then as we identify barriers and families give us feedback, we're trying to be responsive to them and how we can meet them where they're at. Because as my colleague Tom Capretta has said many times, we are going to always operate under the assumption that every single caregiver, parent, family member that wants to be engaged in their son or daughter's education, and it's kind of upon us to meet them where they're at and to make sure that we're giving them opportunities to be involved and engaged. So with that said, what kind of universal strategies have you guys developed in Medina County that you're trying to engage, inform, and involve all of your families?
Yeah, we've talked about some of these already, so we won't get into all of them. But I think we make a concerted effort to make sure when we're providing information that it is, like you said, Alex, in a variety of formats. So when we have an informational session, we are now mostly doing them in person with a virtual option because we know it's hard to get away from home, in order to attend an information session. We're recording them and posting them, or they're available on YouTube so we can share links and that kind of thing so that we can make sure the information can still be gained by families who aren't able to come in person. I think that's a product of the pandemic that has served us very well with being able to meet families where they're at. We, ask for preferences on, do you want a phone call, a text message, just email, and then following through with contacting families at the frequency and in the mode in which they prefer. We have done handouts, brochures that we share countywide that are agency neutral, neutral language, those kinds of things. What else? We've participated in parent mentor meetings. We've also gotten creative too, where we thought, especially here with Medina families, because that's, where Emily and I work, but, how can we reach them and get into a more personal level as opposed to this formal? So we found key points in a kiddo's lives where having that informal in-home family home visit is very beneficial. And we have found that it's at that 8th and the 12th grade is where we're focusing in on those. And so going into their homes, if the family is open to that, and getting to know them at home and seeing their bedroom and the things they like, and, helping the family feel more comfortable with us coming into their home as opposed to a formalized meeting, has been probably one of the biggest strategies over the last 2 or 3 years that we've started doing that. And it builds that rapport with a family that you can do much better than sitting across the table from each other in an office. So we also created a vocational planning tool. We found a barrier that we had was getting accurate assessment information, because oftentimes teachers would, very well intended, but would compare the person when we're looking at competitive work skills, for example, to the other students in the classroom, not necessarily at a competitive level. And OOD uses phrases and terms that are sometimes, hard to understand. And so we created this agency neutral vocational planning tool that looks at competitive work skills, and then, where they're at with those, what is it going to take to help that person move on their path towards competitive community employment. And we, I think, stole the phrase from Chris Filler from Ocali years ago, the conditions for success. She had thrown that phrase out in a training, and we really, really liked that. And so what are those conditions where a student can be successful? So we're looking at, and we look at that and introduce that to teams and teachers and, wherever we can, to be a nice tool to help families understand, as well as professionals, what we're looking at when we're assessing for readiness for competitive employment. So that was another strategy.
I'm just going to drop a link to that vocational planning tool in the chat. So this is a tool that we have shared with a lot of our county-based teams, and it's on the Ohio Employment First website, because I think having that universal assessment form that can follow the student from partner to partner, experience to experience, volunteering and job trialing, maybe with the school, doing formal OOD services in the summer, even additional services and supports that the county board may offer. Assessing on the same skills and the same kind of standard really helps track progress and gives the team an opportunity to really celebrate what the student's been able to accomplish as they move across these different settings. All right. Well, so we had that MTSS structure, right? And the hope is that all the strategies that you just highlighted is reaching all of your families. But we know that there are going to be some barriers for families participating or being able to leverage those strategies. What barriers have you guys witnessed there in Medina County that has led you guys to develop more intentional strategies to engage your families?
Well, one of the things that Jen and I were recalling when we were talking about this presentation was that we had worked really closely with a family for probably 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. And the student was close to exiting school services, and the parent looked at us in a meeting and said, "I've never had a transition plan for my son." And we were like,
"What do you mean?
We've been doing this for 6 years with you." And it was an aha moment for us, in that we needed to be very deliberate about the language we used and the discussions we were having. We were assuming everything that we were doing embedded into, the IEP and the rest of the services that were being provided, that it was all such a seamless process, but it was almost so seamless that nobody noticed.
Yeah.
So that was something that we've looked back on, and we've realized, we need to really talk more about the process of transition, and very purposefully make sure that families feel that they're having those discussions at different points, rather than it's just happening all the time. So we like those home visits, mm-hmm. and doing things like that are a result of being able to have a very obvious point where we're sitting down and saying, what can we do? What do you need? What can we discuss, and all of that. We've also learned that families tend to only be able to deal with the issue that's most pressing to them at the time. That life, and I'm like that in my life as well. And life is really busy and overwhelming, and I don't want to think about what might need to be done 2 years from now. I'm only worried about what I have to do tomorrow. So we were, doing these global presentations about every topic that you might encounter in the 8 years of transition timing. And we realized that the information was really not going anywhere with families. So now we do a lot more specific topical meetings individually. We found that shorter meetings with families where we really can talk about guardianship when they need to know about guardianship has been a lot more productive for us. So that's one. And another one is the barrier of having parents say, I can't come to a session. I want to come to your, transition events in the evening, but I can't come because there's no one to watch my son or daughter. And so we've really brainstormed ways that we can do transition activities that also engage students. So for years we did a transition fair that was at miniature golf, and we rented it out, and we were able to have transition information at each hole of the golf course. But the family and our students were able to do a rec and leisure activity together with siblings and whoever else they wanted to bring. And we were able to engage in a really fun activity and also provide some information and introduce families to providers and people that they might not have met under normal circumstances. So we've tried to be creative, offering an activity in another section of a building where we're going to do a presentation to families about guardianship, but the students are going to engage in an activity that's meaningful and purposeful for them in another room at the same time, stuff like that. That was one. And then also, of course, agency neutral language. We try to use as much agency neutral language as possible to avoid getting families confused and stuck on any of that, and to help all of us.
Right. Right.
I love the miniature golf idea. I may have to steal that. That's pretty great.
Pretty proud of that one. It was fun.
Yeah. That golf course is now a fireworks store, so it no longer exists.
You'll have to find the next family outing, right? I think that's great, right? Is you're being responsive to what families are telling you, right? They want to be there, they want to get this information, but they need some additional support. And we've heard other MAP teams providing even like childcare, right? Like not only do I have Alex, who I'm learning more about transition, but I have two younger kiddos. Alex is fine staying at home by himself for an hour, but I can't leave our young kids with him. So they're offering childcare as part of some of their transition fairs or information sessions. Transportation has been a barrier for some families getting to and from events, so providing carpools or bus passes or even gas cards in order to help them kind of get to where they need to go so they can participate. So just trying to be really intentional by what the barriers you're witnessing, what families are communicating to you. But then also, I think it's really genius to say, we can't just throw all of this at families at one time, right? Like we have to kind of give this like breadcrumb mentality of here, just a little piece here, understand it, act on it, and then we'll talk about the next couple of steps. And that may be really successful for a lot of families, being able to just manage one thing at a time, because what the research tells us, and I have another link I'll drop in the chat here in a couple slides, is the family engagement research for youth and students and children with disabilities is that families are typically spending 20 plus hours coordinating other outside appointments and medical appointments and services and therapies. They have a lot going on, and sometimes they'll prioritize just family dinner together because that's the only time that they get together, because they are going in all these other directions. So being cognizant that maybe just them physically showing up someplace isn't the best way for them to engage. So trying to find those other opportunities for them to be able to get the same information and participate. All right. Well, this will be our last share out for folks. If you've been working kind of with families for a long time, what barriers have you identified to family engagement, whether it's direct feedback or focus groups or just things that you've witnessed when trying to work with families? What are some barriers that you've identified, and maybe after listening to some of these strategies that the Medina team has developed, how could you create a family engagement strategy that addresses that barrier, that maybe brings the child and the family together to experience this while we give them the information? I'm definitely still in that mini golf idea, though. That's fantastic.
You have 18 holes to gather, gain information.
Yeah, and being able to rent it out and have this maybe even a sensory friendly space for some families in order to participate. That's wonderful. So please feel free to unmute or just drop it in the chat. You guys were wonderful in our first activity, our first share out. And maybe while we wait for a couple chats to pop up, Kim and Emily, we didn't practice this question, so I apologize in advance. But what is, having gone through kind of the COVID pandemic, and then we're kind of returning somewhat to business as usual now, is there anything that you guys have noticed coming from that families, like maybe kind of new barriers or just things that you talked about, the virtual option, things that we are holding on to as we can kind of move away from the pandemic?
I don't know.
Yeah, definitely the virtual,
right.
and parents wanting to access information through links a lot more.
Yeah.
They're a lot more comfortable using technology to get the information. And I think that's good. We're here having this background that we have because we had technological difficulties getting on the computer today for this. So we need to ramp up our technological stuff. But yeah, I think the other thing is, I know school-wise, we're giving parents an option for in-person or virtual IEP meetings, and we're still doing 80% of our meetings virtually. So we're not having that face-to-face contact as often. And I know for me that I do better. I feel like I get more connection and I get more of a rapport built when I can work with the family at least once a year in person and sit around the table with people. So I know I miss that
rapport building
piece
of it. Yeah, the chit chat before and after the formal part of the meeting. And we had an IEP right before we came here today, and I had never seen the student because 90%, 99% of the time in a virtual IEP, the student wasn't necessarily on all the time. And families would not come on camera and things like that. So that's been kind of eye-opening, that the number of families you just have never had eyes on because of the virtual platform is drastically higher than before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of new barrier, right? Is you meet people, but you actually physically don't see or meet them. So you may see them at one of your functions or events later and had several meetings, but you're like, I'm sorry, who were you again? I think it's hard to even know, having met a lot of people during COVID and virtually, and then seeing them in person 2-3 years later after you've had dozens of meetings with them can even be hard to recognize people. But yeah, it creates another layer, another barrier when you just haven't physically seen someone, but you're still trying to help connect the service and transition plan and get to know them. It can make it difficult.
Yeah, I think that's true too. Even for agency collaboration, when a lot of agencies are working, so virtually, and it's so efficient and quick to just do that, it's hard to step back into that in person and hey, come meet me face to face, when they just and I'm not saying that accusatorily, but it's hard to get back into that mentality of, not being as productive, so to speak, at the mercy of seeing people in person.
We've got a couple here in the chat that I'll read. Gina said, "Thank you for sharing your process and engagement strategies. It's a great blueprint to build my team into. Basically, make agencies talk to us and invite us to the table." Yes, just keep showing up, right? And sometimes bring coffee.
That's right.
Box of donuts will go a long way. Yeah.
And then Lori shared, "I like your idea of sharing what families need when they need it and separating things out. I worked with a family of a 12th grader, and it became clear that when the school team was saying DODD and OOD, the parent wasn't clear exactly which agency they had talked to. So was it someone from OOD or DODD? Yeah, it's tough when not only do we have a bunch of acronyms, but they are similar, right? They will have all the same letters. People may even interchange them incorrectly, and it can become very confusing for parents very quickly. So yeah, sometimes it's just, here's what you need to know right now. And we really try to help families connect with other families with lived experience too, right? Because that's such a wonderful opportunity to talk very clearly and plainly, and to be able to say, this is actually the first 2 steps you need to take right here. Like, you have all of this information. And of course, at some point you're going to need it all, but right now you can probably just focus on these 2 things. And being able to leverage past families that have gone through this process to help support or mentor other families is a really helpful strategy. And then Kayla said, "Socioeconomic status is a definite barrier. We have a strong connection with agencies like JOG, J-O-G, to help support these families that may be struggling financially." Yeah, I think anytime you can bring partners on that are going to help, with this very specific need or group of families and youth, that's why we have OOD and county boards, right? They fill this very specific need for some of our students with disabilities. So yeah, broadening that even further is really helpful. All right, thank you guys. We are pretty much to time. I did want to share on our Ohio Employment First website and our transition planning button, we have a couple of tools in there to help families understand each other's systems and tools for even professionals. We've got our agency navigation tool, and which has OOD, County Board, Department of Medicaid, Social Security. We're adding a few different ones as well for our Centers for Independent Living and the new Ohio RISE, our mobility managers who are now regionally based consultants through the Department of Transportation that can help fill different transportation needs in the community. So a great way or a great place to start when you're trying to build a team. And then transition vocabulary, right? We talked about language being a really big barrier. So if we had a crosswalk, or we could sit down and show families, what does an IEP, an IPE, and an ISP, they're all sound very similar. And yes, they are all plans or programs, but they all are focusing on different things. So that transition crosswalk can be very helpful as well. And then I dropped a link in the chat, but this is kind of just a quick front page view of the vocational planning tool that they shared. So please feel free to kind of use that. That's available for free on the Ohio Employment First website, and can be a really helpful tool for transition age youth. And then finally, if you had any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask us today, please feel free to reach out. I know I dropped my email in the chat. I'll do it again. I don't know if Emily and Jen would like to drop theirs as well, but you can kind of record it, or I'm sure ask Bobby or anyone else to complete.
That's the bell going off at the school. You're the Meet George Jetson side.
That's awesome.
Thank you, everyone. We are at our final stopping time, 1:45. So Alex has